Hey guys, welcome to Celia's Playlists. Today I am here with Brett Higgins, who is a multi-instrumentalist as well as a producer and engineer from Michigan. And you can find his project, The Great Homesickness, online. So, hey Brett, how's it going today?
Hey Celia, great to talk to you.
I'm excited to have you on here because we have some very interesting questions that we spoke about before this interview, and I'm really excited for us to get into those. But before we start on that, can you tell me a little bit about your, I guess, musical history?
So I'm 38 years old. I started playing drums when I was very young, like sixth grade kind of thing, and it wasn't long after that until I started to get into like the local music scene in northern Michigan where I grew up, going to shows at American Legion halls, you know, scrapping with scrapping in little bands in my parents' basement, trying to get shows locally and put on shows whenever we could, just making a lot of noise and having the time of my life. So that was all like in the way of kind of Midwest emo punk and some hardcore and metal stuff. And so that's kind of the water that I simmered in for the high school years, for the years after that. After high school, I'd say like most of my music was actually in church bands.
That's
So
cool.
it was I really owe a lot to those opportunities to learn how to play in a band, not professionally, but really, really, really high, what's the word? High standards, I guess.
Hmm.
Um, and branching out into different instruments as well. I really played more electric guitar during that time than any other time in my life. I picked up the bass at some point just because I needed it. Um, and through all of that, I kind of, knew I wanted to make music kind of out of that space for a while. But then I had this kind of faith crisis, maybe about 10 years ago as a start, where all of that kind of went into question, and I was changing what I think about pretty much everything that was really important to me. And so out of that, I think has come the music that I'm working on now. I'm working on this like 14 song album that's been in my head for a decade, and I've really just started to release stuff. Um, what is it? The very end of 2022 was the first song I put out, as myself. And so I put up a couple since then, and it's really been great to engage with folks on threads, especially kind of see other folks who have similar background. Actually, it's like most of the musicians I meet on threads, oddly enough, have something of that sort of faith journey, deconstruction, deconversion, whatever in their story. And mine's a little different, especially from like some of the records that I've really found helpful during that time. I find that they tend to go really beautifully and honestly into this space of I'm going to question everything. I'm going to show you how it feels to have that floor drop out from under your feet, and then just be open to whatever there is after that. My journey is a bit more kind of back into a reimagining of the faith that I left, even if I only left it in my head. I feel like I've stayed in similar environments, but it's very much coming into that pretty traditional evangelical Christianity in my case, going to like the depths of existential despair, and then coming out of that with something, not what you came in with, but something beautiful.
I have so much that I want to dig into with this explanation that has just been brought forth in front of me. Um, let's go. Let's start with the fact that you are a multi instrumentalist, and I love
Sure.
that you started with drums because
Mm.
I feel like starting with rhythm and then like building your repertoire of instruments on top of that must have given you a really cool writing style now that you're at this point. And I believe that you're a studio project, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I would love to play them out more, but at this point, so I've, married 15 years, two beautiful kids, and we keep busy for sure. So I would love to get back into playing shows occasionally, but right now I'm in the basement. Uh,
So, like when you're writing your songs, because you mentioned that you have what did you say, 14 song album? Is that correct?
yeah, that's right.
So how do you approach that? Because you've mentioned that you've had these ideas for years, and I feel like that's something that's very relatable for especially people that can't obviously do this full time. They have it stuck here, and what was the process of getting it actually into like a DAW and getting these songs created?
Yeah, so the state of things is I've got 14 songs. They're basically all at least demo state, and the way that this all kind of came together was, I mentioned I had this existential or faith crisis several years ago, and around that same time, I was also dealing with kind of a family crisis in terms of, our first daughter was born, and then we had a miscarriage in our family, and a couple of years later, our second daughter was born, and so I realized at some point in that the journey I was on with my faith was the same as the journey I was on in my life of like, man, this sudden burst or this, this feeling of life and joy and everything is good. And then suddenly, some crisis comes and everything seems in question and everything seems unstable and scary. And then, you don't go through that too fast. You don't pretend it's not as deep and as much of a wound as it is, but time passes and then you start to see beauty again. And so when my second daughter was born, that was like this explosion of new life, literally, obviously, but just kind of gave me the eyes to see that things will be better again. And so at that point I realized, oh, this is one story with two kind of parallel threads, and this is the album I've been wanting to make. I didn't really have like a focus or a vision for anything I wanted to put out, just like a bunch of scattered ideas that I wrote in notes and stuff until this pivotal season of my life where all this kind of collided. And I think I realized it as I was listening to some podcast about the book of Lamentations in the Bible, where there's this sense of the city of Jerusalem has been destroyed, and you're just kind of looking on the ruins and seeing where the people came from and what they have before them now. And is there still anything good to sing about? Mm-hmm. Is there any life left here? And so the line that like kind of catalyzed all this for me was something like, what can I say for you? The prophet speaking of Jerusalem, your wound is as deep as the sea. Who can heal you? And so the album is called As Deep as the Sea for that reason.
Very cool.
So we're going there.
So my next question for you is like, how would you like, I want to figure out how to ask this question because I feel like I have gone through like a couple of awakening moments in my life. How would you say that kind of inspiration was kind of, how do I ask? Let me phrase this. So I have gone through like a season of like awakenings in the past year for myself, and how was it for you being able to have a creative outlet to work through those things? Because I feel like having that musical outlet was probably a very beneficial thing in your like growth process.
It absolutely has been and continues to be. Yeah. I feel like early on in the project or early on in the process of that shift, deconstruction, whatever you want to call it, evolution, the thing that kept me grounded was other people's music. Folks like David Bazan is kind of a common one for folks. And there's some others I could mention, but other artists who had, like, I've heard before maybe, but I started to resonate with their words in ways that I hadn't before. And so that was kind of pivotal for the start. But at some point, me being me, this is going to have to be something that comes out. And then so like the music I'm making is just the music I need to stay sane and to process through some of the stuff I mentioned. This is a sort of therapy. Just kind of creating this stuff. And I spent a long time thinking that when I was in the thick of it and not really feeling a lot of peace, I spent most time creating new songs in that, trying to capture this journey, and working towards a sense of peace and wholeness as I was doing that. As the arc of the album came together, it was, simultaneously I'm reflecting on my experience and making peace with it. And so part of that has definitely been crafting the songs and telling the story.
I'm here. Sorry about that. I made you full screen, and then I clicked something, and then I responded, and then it did not go because I made you full screen. But
Ah,
I totally like. I feel like art comes from an interesting place and interesting struggles, and I think that it's interesting. I keep saying interesting
sorry.
that it comes from a religious place because not everyone has that kind of background, and that's
Mm-hmm.
not a thing that everyone can relate to, and that's not a negative or a positive. But I want to circle back to the fact that you were in some church related bands.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of atmosphere is the church related bands versus, like, the bands that you said that you grew up being a part of?
Yeah, so I feel like the common thread has very much been, I have vivid memories of showing up to a show, either with some friends or by myself, in high school and college, whatever. And there's a moment where like the band comes out and everyone's in the crowd is responding, and like when the first song hits and everyone's singing the same things together, it's like, oh my gosh, there's a connection here that is really too powerful to put into words, and everyone's just kind of swept up in it, and you feel it in your chest, and just everything that's about to happen, and wash over you. It's one of the wildest experiences that I've had the privilege of having several times in my life. I realized at some point that carried over into what I resonated with from church, whether it was, youth group in high school, that moment of, I don't really have to think about I'm not really thinking about ideas about God or any particular doctrine or anything like that. I'm just swept up in a moment of connection, and there's something going on here that none of us can quite express, but we all know we need it. Um, so I've been kind of surprised to see those connections, because for a long time I was very much in the doctrine and the intellectual. This is kind of my college journey, I think, starting where I was very much in the evangelical headspace of, we've got this mission and we've got to get busy on it because everything hangs in the balance, and everything depends on us doing what Jesus said or whatnot. And usually when they say that, they mean converting people, and they wouldn't say it that way, but um, so to kind of step back and look at that whole musical aspect of the experience, that drew me in, I really value that still, and I'm actually still in a fairly evangelical church, though I don't subscribe to a lot, like most of the things. Like there's a lot of difference between me and what the church teaches, but I still see this beauty of folks are just kind of reaching out to something to find something bigger than themselves they can connect to, and this music they find is a way they find to connect to it. And so even with that, I'm hoping to find folks who have longed for that as well, can't be in those spaces anymore. And I totally respect and understand that because I often can't be in those spaces myself anymore. Um, but yeah, I'm hoping. I've actually come to think of it, as I've posted stuff on threads, I've actually heard a few responses from folks who say things like, I'm not religious, but this here is powerful, and that's been really surprising, honestly, because I thought I was making, just telling my own story and my own experience, and kind of being comfortable with that not being everyone's experience. Um, but to find those points of connection has been really rewarding, and yeah, makes me want to keep doing it.
I get that. I feel like just putting yourself out there in such a way, and especially on a public forum like Threads, you never know who you're going to meet, and you never know who is going to connect with, the things that you're creating. I know that a lot of the themes and topics in your music are very, very powerful and very, like, very real in terms of the things that you've dealt with in your life. when you were in the creative process of creating the different songs, did you feel that you were getting like an intense connection with like the different things that you were bringing to life at those times?
I absolutely did. So there are moments on this album because it's a strange sort of thing trying to having an idea of where you've been and then trying to go back and capture that moment for the sake of a song or a moment in a song. But that process has been super liberating for me. It's allowed me to kind of say some things I didn't feel comfortable saying in the moment, but that I know now that I was feeling, like
Mm-hmm.
deep, direct, like yelling at God sort of level of um, expression of emotion. Um, allowing myself to remember what it was like to feel like there's nothing good in the world, there's nothing worth singing about, and to return to that moment, even briefly in a song, a line in a song. I feel like there are several moments in this album that are almost hard to listen to and to go back into, but feel really genuine and like, yeah, this really happened, and it's like that scar is worth showing, because it's a part of the story, and I wouldn't be who I am today without it.
I have a friend, and she always says that, like, when you are performing music, you need to feel music. And I feel
Mm.
like when you're taking that kind of connection that you have with a song, with a time, with a feeling, and putting it into the music, people could feel that on the other side.
Mm.
So, like, I always find it interesting to ask about, like, the connection while you were creating, because I've been in the room with people recording things like vocals or recording, obviously like guitar or whatever, and you can kind of hear some of their experience in the actual
Mm.
song. And I think that that really shines through in what I've heard of your music thus far.
Mm.
So that's
Thank
a
you.
really cool thing that you're able to like, bring to the table through the experiences of your life. So I just wanted to commend you on being able to get that across in your music.
Thank you. Appreciate
Of
that.
course. So we're coming up towards the end of the interview, and I have been asking everyone this question, and you can take it in whatever direction you would like. What would be your advice to someone that is trying to get into music, whatever area of music, for the first time now?
The number one thing I've been learning is that, and I'll speak to this person directly, you have more to offer than you think you do, and you are more ready than you think you are. So just go, and whatever you make it, and put yourself into it, and it'll be worth it.
I think that's great advice. So, like, everyone, just just start. Just start. So, Brett, I know that your project is called The Great Homesickness. Where can everyone find you, and where can everyone listen to your music?
So you can find The Great Homesickness on all streaming services. I have 3 songs out now. I actually released the most recent one on February 9th called Brother. This is my favorite song I've ever written. I really hope you'll take a listen. Um, you can find me at thegreathomesickness.bandcamp.com. That also has a link to my Threads profile, which is harder to find from my artist name or my actual name. If you don't know, it's Here Is Anywhere. Of course, it's all one word, no underscores or anything. After one of my favorite songs. I think I posted that. But anyway, I'm rambling. The Great Homesickness. Search
The Great
everywhere.
Homesickness. Amazing. Thank you so much for sitting down with me, Brett. I had a lot of fun learning a little bit more about your backstory, and I'm glad that we were able to hang out and chat today.
Thank you so much. This has been great. I look forward to checking out the playlist again and again and again, and all the other interviews.
Thank you for the support. I really appreciate it. And I will be back for the next interview. So bye, everybody.
Bye.